All right, so social innovation and governance. That's
Yeah,
another Nobel Prize
sure,
winning response.
Sure. No, I mean, my personal opinion is no price of carbon, there's no business model. I mean, there needs to be a revenue source in order for this stuff to happen. So, but I think, so that one I think is the easy one to say, that's the standard economist answer. But I think in a more interesting one, and unfortunately I think the approach that is going to be pursued, and I think could be potentially very expensive, is the regulatory approaches, where what I do is I choose to redefine what the product is in such a way that it achieves my end. So for example, I could say, look, what is a power plant now produces electricity, but only produces this intensity of carbon. And the good news about the engineers is the engineers can pretty much hit almost anything. It's just a question of what the cost is. They're very creative, and so that I suspect is one of the ways that it could come about, is redefining what the product is in such a way that these only things that can be sold are products that are hopefully going to achieve this. But in some sense, we're taking a very indirect, expensive route to doing that. But the nice thing is that it's hiding the costs in terms of it's making it difficult, I think, as well to assess the benefits. But to me, I think the simplest solution is just to say, look, unless there's a price for carbon, it's hard to see the business models. I mean, I live in Silicon Valley, so I interact with a lot of the venture capitalists, and it's really, like 3 years ago, I would always get a number of venture capitalists who would say, we'd like to show you this new business that we have in mind, and we think it's really great. And they're right, it's really great, it's really wonderful, but it can't make a buck. And the only reason it can make a buck is because there's government subsidies. And so pretty soon they got sick and tired of hearing my standard answer is, your business model is based on the existence of this subsidies into the future. This thing, fossil fuels are still too cheap. I'm really sorry. And a ton of money was poured into all over the green sector. And basically, now the next round has figured that one out. And I think they're going to the places where I think there are business models, but the thing that's going to make the transforming is the price of carbon, if you ask me.
Any other quick answers on this? Go for it.
Okay, a couple points. There's enough CO2 around now, even if we stop producing any, to warm the planet decades into the future. So we're already committed to warming, and we can wait as long as we want and see what happens. But I think on this score, we're pretty much in trouble. A lot of governments realize it. A lot of industries realize it. But it's costly to do something politically or economically. So I think there should be transparency in taxing and transparency in budgeting. I think the process is crazy. We don't know where the money's coming from. The wars aren't in the budget for some presidents. They're in the budget for other presidents. There's a lot of money being wasted, and I don't know where it's going, and that's why I don't want you to tax me. I mean, that's part of the problem. So the idea is, well, tax someone else. But you want roads, you want bridges, you want things, and who pays for it? It's your taxes. So we have to sort it out. And so one last social equity thing, we have to separate free riders from freeloaders. Okay? We talk about, oh, I don't want to pay taxes because the poor, let them carry some of this burden too. I don't care if they can't pay. If I can afford to pay, that's my mental attitude. There'll be free riders because they can't pay, and I don't mind that. What I do mind are freeloaders. These are the ones who can pay and don't want to pay, so they're piggybacking me when they actually should be, as you say, bellying up to the bar and paying their fair share of those taxes. So transparency in budgeting, transparency in taxes.
Mike, last word?
Sure. Professionally, mostly I focus on the adaptations issues swirling around climate change, which is to say, given that change is coming, how ought we be preparing and those sorts of things. I work with a lot of water managers, a lot of land managers, even public health folks and that sort of thing. And I'm personally convinced and professionally convinced that smart in the long haul is cheaper. Okay? Problem is, really getting some of the externalities brought back into the mix, but also it's really getting people to understand that really, a lot of these adaptation measures are cheaper in the long haul. We will pay less if we adjust in advance rather than deal with Katrina sorts of trying to fix things after the fact. On the mitigation side, by which I mean the reduction in how much of these greenhouse gases we emit and those sorts of things, I'm not so sure, whether SMART is in the long haul cheaper or more expensive, but it's something that the sorts of projections we've been looking at certainly suggest is a good bet that in the long haul those investments are just necessary by way of insurance, for ourselves, I would argue, as well as for our kids and grandkids. So.
Well, I guess my role is to do a quick wrap up and try to tie some of the loose ends together. And let me kind of lay out one thought for us to chew over during the dinner, the lunch digestion before and after our luncheon presenter. If we're going to reach that goal of having a more positive future, which is cleaner and greener and cooler, smarter, whatever adjectives you want to put to that, there's a technology component, and the engineering behind that technology is critical. It has to respond to the public agenda, partly because that's where the demand is, that's where the customers are, but the public agenda includes the governmental policy piece. But in a circumstance like we face, where government policy is often paralyzed by bad politics and by ideology, the question is, where do the social innovations come that will make that breakthrough possible? And we've heard some interesting insights and I think some pretty powerful prescriptions about how that happens, where it happens, when it happens. My own prediction is it's happening already. The future is here. It's in lots of small places and small-scale experiments. The question really is not whether the experiment that's underway is a good experiment and will succeed on its own, but whether it's scalable, whether it's replicable, whether it's transferable. That's the question that will make the difference, because the difference that makes a difference is not small-scale experiments. It's broad-ranging change. This is a big country. The whole world is watching the response in the United States, so to whatever extent that we act, the rest of the world will respond, whether it's on nuclear proliferation at the summit in Washington right now, or whether it's how California handles its budget crisis, which is being replicated all around the world, or how we deal with the climate challenge. Those kinds of local responses at the state level, at the urban level, but eventually making itself felt at the federal level, are going to be measured very carefully and evaluated very carefully by economists who have a very, tough analytical job, which is to know what the costs and the benefits are, but to measure those benefits in a context which is the broader public interest and not just the single corporate interest or the small community's interest. That's not going to be easy, and I'm glad we had a chance this morning to dig into this. I hope it was provocative for you. Our panel is going to be here for lunch, so make sure to buttonhole them and get some answers to questions you didn't get to ask. Thank you for being part of this, and thanks to Toyota for convening this program.